All right, can you guys hear me? Hey, that's actually pretty good. Can you hear me okay? I've had a sinus infection, so this whole thing could come to an end in like 5 minutes by me just losing it. I think what I'm going to do is try and turn this way a little bit. Has anybody never heard one of my presentations before? Just a couple of you? Never?
Oh, never.
So that guy, you have. Who hasn't? Okay, so just a couple. Clayton, do you remember what you wanted me to talk about tonight? He's not paying attention.
He's fixing your reverb.
I'm sorry, you were asking me.
Do you remember what you wanted me to talk about tonight?
I think you were going to talk about the Book of Mormon as a timeline, and then.
No, you sent me a specific.
Yeah, I gave you a couple chapters in 2nd Nephi that I wanted you to kind of get.
I actually thought that was an interesting place, but and so I was going to kind of talk about that for just a second, but I can wait to do that till later, so you can make sure I do a good job. All right. I apologize. I'm going to be really quiet tonight because of my voice, and I guess I'm failing on the input here. Let's see. There we go. Okay, have you ever noticed that pretty much the entire gospel and the scriptures as we know them are a giant parable about a wedding? So I was thinking for the past couple of weeks, well, it's there, but I don't know if it's really there. But what if I challenged you to find it in the very beginning of the scriptures? What do you think? Where would you point to? Joseph? Okay, Joseph in Egypt. I don't disagree. What if I said I think you can go back further? In the Garden of Eden. What do you think is the thing that represents and are you still hearing me? I feel like that's kind of, what do you think is the thing that represents the beginning, the inception of the wedding? Who picks Adam's bride?
The father.
Okay. And do you remember what happens to kind of like symbolically represent that they're going to be joined? The rib. Which is, I don't know what I'm talking about here, okay? I'm just kind of throwing out at you right now some things I've noticed. In the Old Testament Hebrew language, a covenant is cut. So if you're cutting a rib and taking out a rib, I don't know if I actually believe Adam had a rib taken out and Eve was created from a rib. That'd be pretty interesting. Interesting bioengineering by God, right? But something is there, right? Something symbolically right there in the very beginning about a wedding. Father has picked a bride for his son. Adam is a son of God. And these two are going to get married. And we also know this because there's a command given to multiply and replenish the earth. So right at the very beginning is this story. Now, has everybody been doing your come follow me? Have you covered Abraham? Who is Abraham in similitude of? With the father, which is kind of interesting, right? So it would make sense that the father has to then sacrifice his son. Isaac becomes the son. Who selects Isaac's bride?
The servant.
Okay, well, he's sent for him. He kind of picks, but the father's like, that's the one. Go and do, right? So again, we have the father in charge of selecting the bride for his son. Okay, so if Abraham is the father and Isaac is the son, who is Jacob? What do you think? The posterity. So we call Jacob Israel. President Nelson has talked about the gathering of Israel. So how does Israel fit into the marital relationship? If Abraham's the father, Isaac is the son, Jacob is the household, that which was given to the son, right? So if Isaac is the son and the bride bears the posterity, Jacob, the house or the posterity given unto the son is this house of Israel. So we can see in the very beginning all this imagery surrounding marriage. So wouldn't it make sense? Okay, now, well, before I go there, in the old temple ceremony, if Christ is who the old temple ceremony, I mean before Christ came. Before Christ came, there's a temple, right? They're going to the temple. Wouldn't it make sense that the temple is a condescension ceremony? Because Christ is going to condescend. So when Aaron goes back, or Moses goes back behind in the Holy of Holies, he's going to come through as the high priest in similitude of Christ, taking upon himself a mortal tabernacle to dwell amongst his people. So that's the condescension ceremony. So Christ actually condescends and he comes to receive his bride, his family, his household. And what does his bride do? Well, she kills him, right? So Jacob's posterity, the 12 tribes, turn against him, and in the house of Judah, remember Tamar? You're doing your come follow me. Tamar, who's Tamar? Tamar's the daughter-in-law of Judah, and she becomes one of the points in the posterity line of Christ. Have you ever noticed that all of his ancestors are all basically harlots and adulteresses and whoremongering men? So Christ comes, he shows up for the wedding, and the bride is unworthy. Right, so what happens when the bride is unworthy?
Stoned.
She's stoned, which makes that parable like even more meaningful, right? When they're all about to stone the woman, he says, I find no fault in thee. So, and it also makes more sense as to why he would be on the cross and say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He's willing to forgive the bride who is found in adultery, and he takes upon himself the sin of the bride, and he says, I'll be back. So when he comes back, what's happening? If his father picked his bride, we have this whole big parable in similitude with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Jacob is the household that was picked for him. The church is his bride. He shows up, they're in adultery. He forgives them, and he says, I'll be back, right? And what happens when he comes back? What if he finds the bride in adultery again? Yeah, so we'd have a repeat, and he'd have to forgive again, then he'd have to go away, but that's not how the parable goes, right? He comes back, and what does he say he's coming back to? The marriage feast. So he's coming to the marriage feast. Take all of that and think of the LDS temple ceremony. Where do you wind up at the end? And then where? And then where? We often forget this part because we don't do it anymore. We go back and we do initiatories. We go back and we do endowments. We go back and we do sealings, but we forget that it's all connected. So you do your initiatories, you do your endowment, and you get sealed. The whole thing is an ascension ceremony culminating in a wedding. So now think back to the ancient Jews. They weren't ready when Christ came, even though their entire temple ceremony testified he would come. Our entire temple ceremony testifies of the second coming of Jesus Christ. That make sense? So of all the people in the world, excuse to be ready, who are those that will be held most accountable for not being prepared? Us. So we could say, well, I didn't know that. Well, I mean, can we be really candid with ourselves and say if we didn't know that, we might be engaged in some dead works? We're going to the temple over and over and over, patting ourselves on the back without ever really wrestling with understanding what we're doing at the temple, seeing the signs that are ever present before us as we go. So are we, I feel like I'm going to block you guys, are we the slumbering bride? Are we the virgins that are slumbering? And if so, how do you wake up out of that? Slumber does not necessarily mean sleeping. It can be a state of negligence. That's a little bit easier for me to associate with myself, although there have been times where I've been asleep. We all know this verse, wherefore the Lord commandeth you, when ye shall see these things come among you, that ye shall awake. Did you ever consider this as marriage parable language? So this has to be latter-day language, because the latter-day bridegroom comes to receive his bride, and the virgins and the helpers or the watchmen are unprepared and or asleep. This is also for a temple attendee, this should have some meaning to you. Okay, O all ye who can understand my words, I pray that you should awake to a remembrance of the awful situation. Okay, well, what is that? There are not any among you. Okay, so King Benjamin is actually going to explain what it means to be asleep and in an awful situation. There are not any among you, but what knoweth that ye are eternally indebted to your heavenly Father, to render to him all that you have. That's the law of consecration. It's also the law of obedience and sacrifice, all rolled into one. And also have been taught concerning the records which contain the prophecies down to the time of our father Lehi, the Old Testament, and all that's been spoken by our fathers till now, the Book of Mormon. So, and then he includes the words of the living prophets. So this is us. After you've known and been taught all these things, if you should transgress and go contrary to that which has been spoken, that you do withdraw yourselves from the Spirit of the Lord. Okay, so if we take Utah, and we ask ourselves, who fits this bill better than anybody else?
My kids.
Yeah, usually my kids. Would this not be Latter-day Saints, particularly in Utah? Therefore, if that man repenteth not, and remaineth an enemy to God, this is also temple instruction, the demands of divine justice do awaken his mortal soul to a lively sense of his own guilt. And mercy hath no claim on that man, therefore his final doom is to endure torment. Okay, so we could look at that and we could say, well, that's, I'm good with that. That'll happen after I die. So eat, drink, and be merry, right? And in the end, God will beat us with a few stripes and he'll send you to the telestial kingdom at least. And what's the telestial kingdom like? It's not bad, right? So don't worry, like all is well. So here we are, right, in this day in which we live. I'm not going to go too much into this, but basically both of them will get into, both King Benjamin and this verse here from 35:16, which is the Lord, will basically say your awful situation is you've let the beast, the government, the secret combinations, basically get above you. You've subjected yourselves to them. You've forgotten the purpose of your covenants. And now you're all going to be destroyed. And that's actually kind of what the Lord gets into here is this is him visiting with the people of Bountiful after they have been destroyed. Okay, so how, one, in order to wake up, let's say that the Lord actually is really coming, that there's a literal second coming. How would you convince somebody you love that that is happening.
I'd invite him to a Morgan Philpot.
Yeah. I don't know about that guy. Would you agree that one of the best, well, if they're not a believer, this would be difficult, but if they are a believer and they're a member of the church, how about the words of a living prophet? So I normally do this in the end. I'm going to do it at the beginning. Watch this. I'm going to go over here into the Gospel Library app. I'm going to use this little search feature right here, which anybody can do anytime. Oh, maybe I should keep that. Let's do that one. That's a good one too, though. Okay. And we're going to search second coming. Have you ever heard that phrase? Oh, they always talk about that. Okay, so I just narrowed the search down. We're looking at General Conference. We're going to look at the church presidents. We're going to have to do a little filtering on our own. I'll show you why. We're going to sort up at the top. We're going to sort by chronology. And as you would expect, we're going to have President Russell M. Nelson being the most recent president of the church to talk about the second coming. If I scroll through, look at Kingdoms of Glory, October 2023, it says President Oaks. Do you see what it's doing? It's backfilling because it considers him a president now, but that talk was not given while he was the president. Okay, so I want only talks given by presidents of the church. I go all the way back, as far as it'll go, to 1971. How long ago is that? 55 years. And I can get to Harold B. Lee. And there are 21 conference talks where a president of the church talks about the second coming in 55 years. 21. How many of those do you think are President Nelson? Out of 21. 14. Okay, 14. So about how many times have all the presidents combined in 55 years talked about the second coming outside of President Nelson? 7. Do you think that means something? Or do you think President Nelson, he's like, I made it. I held on until I was 90. What was he, 93 when he took over? He's like, I know how I'm going to go out. I'm going to tell everybody Jesus is coming. That'll get him. And he's just doing that like it's the biggest practical joke ever played on the church. You think that's why he did it? I mean, what do you have to be thinking to believe that this is not like a flashing neon billboard to the members of the church saying, wake up, the Lord is coming? How many members of the church do you think know this? How hard is this to share? It's super easy to share. All you have to do is take your phone to a friend, open the Gospel Library app, and show them that. See you know how fast you can do that? So how many people can we go out and tell after this, hey, the Lord's coming? And then they say to you, they'll say, oh, no man knows the day and the hour. And you'll be like, let me show you something. There's no sense of urgency. Okay, I'm glad you said that. So everybody thinks he's coming, but nobody thinks it's anytime soon. Go ahead.
Always coming, just maybe not in their lifetime.
Yeah.
They've been saying that for years. Yeah. Why now they've been saying that?
Well, now you can show them they haven't been saying that, right? Go ahead.
Debbie's friend, she told me how many years ago Just a year or so ago, ran into President Nelson getting out of his car and went up to him and asked him, "What can you tell us? What's the most helpful thing you can tell us?" And he said, "Hopefully you've got enough time, but you need to line your walls with food storage."
Oh, wow. Line your walls with food storage.
And this was it a year, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago?
I like that. Okay, I gotta. Okay, take a look at this. If somebody says to you, he's not coming for a long time, we don't know when, it's not going to be in my lifetime, just look at this. What's a sign of an antichrist spirit? Okay, there's one.
They know Christ.
Okay, have you notice a pattern in just those two things? Let's go to another one. 3 Nephi 7. Okay, that's actually not a good one. Because it's only in the chapter heading. He denies.
Liar.
Okay, and who is a liar but he that denieth that Jesus is the Christ? That one's an easy one. What do they all have in common? He's not really coming. He didn't really come. He didn't come back then. He isn't who he says he is right now, and he is not coming again. That is the spirit of Antichrist. So if you ever hear somebody say, well, who's the Antichrist? I'm like, well, just find any person like this. Right? Find anybody who says, oh, he's not coming. There's your Antichrist. What's your job now with that person? You got to get them to repent.
We went to the storehouse in Linden last week, and we were the only ones in there. And they said, people used to come, but they don't come anymore. And there were 4 missionaries in there, and we had one other friend. We have strawberries now, freeze-dried.
Oh, wow.
I went in 2020 and they told me the same thing. They said, there should be a line out this door and nobody's there.
Well,
At the storehouse.
okay.
Which storehouse? You said
And they're so
Sandy
healthy.
one.
Sandy.
Yeah,
Probably happening at all of them.
he also said that he wasn't sure of the exact date, but he said it was somewhere between 2020 and 2021, that the line was out the door. They only have 1 cash register, and so people come in and buy 35 cases, holds up the whole line. Then people in the back of the line are very angry by the time they get up there and find out that the storehouse is empty, and so is the warehouse.
He said, who said this? Oh.
The missionaries that work there. He said,
Well,
we sold out he said we sold out in the storehouse as well as the warehouse within 4 days.
Okay, I'm not going to make too many remarks on that except maybe towards the end. All right. Oh man, you know, I'm gonna jump out of here, and I'm gonna talk about what Clayton asked me to talk about, because this is kind of relevant to that. I'm going to take you to 1 Nephi 14 real quick. And by the way, I'm functioning at about like 65% capacity tonight. Whatever this sinus infection did to my head's not processing normal, so bear with me tonight if you would. Okay. First, what's that? Oh yeah, you bet. Okay, 1 Nephi 14, verse 14. Anybody remember President Nelson's statement that we have front row seats to what Nephi saw? When the saints would be scattered in small number, he then gives a footnote in that talk, and this is where you'd get to. Came to pass, I, Nephi, beheld the power of the Lamb of God, that it descended upon the saints of the church of the Lamb, and upon the covenant people of the Lord, who were scattered upon all the face of the earth. And they were armed with righteousness and with the power of God in great glory. And I beheld that the wrath of God was poured out upon that great and abominable church, insomuch that there were wars and rumors of wars. Okay, if President Nelson is saying, we have front row seats to witness what Nephi saw. What did Nephi see? He saw us, armed with righteousness, scattered all over the world. He saw the wrath of God poured out, and he saw wars and rumors of wars. That happened since President Nelson. And the day cometh that the wrath of God is poured out upon the mother of harlots, which is the great and abominable church, whose founder is the devil. And at that day the work of the Father shall commence in preparing the way for the fulfilling of his covenants, which he hath made to who? This is the wedding. Who has to get the wedding feast ready? Whose son is coming to marry the bride? So did President Nelson talk about us studying the covenants made with the house of Israel? That's one of his talks also. So did President Nelson, verse 15, talk about the darker signs of the times in his spiritual momentum talk? And he named what the darker signs of the times are. Tsunamis, pandemics, armed conflicts. Okay, now if you've seen any of my presentations before, you know this, but where can we study the wrath of God? So if President Nelson says, we have front row seats, and we're about to see these wars poured out, and we're about to see the wrath of God poured out, where do we read about the wrath of God? Revelation. Okay, let's go all the way back to the top. Okay, see this? What's the action being undertaken? This whole chapter is about the pouring out of wrath. So again, let's just walk through this. If President Nelson says we have front row seats to watch this, do we live in this time? Okay, let's go to 2 Nephi 12:12. Oh, whoops. For the day of the Lord of hosts soon cometh, yea, upon everyone, upon the proud and the lofty, upon everyone who is lifted up. The day of the Lord shall come. Okay, so who's it come upon? All nations. One of the signs of the last days is that everything that we know, you've been to a grand finale firework display. What's a grand finale? It's the sum of all parts, right? You bring everything back and you do it all at once. That's the grand finale. So we need to be looking for signs that affect the entirety of the world. Are we seeing those?
Yes.
Okay, DNC, let's go to DNC 87. Okay, look at that first verse. Verily, thus saith the Lord concerning the wars that will shortly come to pass. Comma, eliminate everything after that comma. Just ignore it. Wars that will shortly come to pass, which will eventually terminate in the death and misery of many souls. So what's this section about? Ignore everything in between the commas. The wars that will terminate in the death of many souls. What does the stuff inside the commas have to do with that? That's when you know it has begun. And the time will come that war will be poured out upon all nations, beginning at this place. So when you see the stuff between the commas, that's the beginning, excuse me, of a type of warfare that will lead to the death of many people. He then tells you in verse 3 a little bit more about the stuff between the commas. And what do we see? War poured out upon all nations. Okay, well, we can go back and we can look at that and we can say, well, that has happened. It has been happening. It shall come to pass, slaves shall rise up against their masters, who shall be marshaled and disciplined for war. It shall come to pass, the remnants who are left will marshal themselves and shall become exceedingly angry. And thus, with the sword and by bloodshed, the inhabitants of the earth shall mourn. With famine and plague and earthquake and thunder and the fierce and vivid lightning shall the inhabitants of the earth be made to feel the wrath and indignation and chastening hand of an almighty God until what? So how does that relate to 2 Nephi 12:12, where the Lord says, for the day of the Lord of hosts soon cometh upon all nations, and the day of the Lord is the day when the wrath shall be poured out. And President Nelson says you have front row seats to that. So what's it going to end in? The full end of all nations. So if we then go to Isaiah 13:6. Okay, now, Clayton, you recognize where this is? Or no, you don't. I haven't got there yet. I'm coming back to it. I'll get there. Isaiah 13:6. Howl ye, for the day of the Lord is at hand. It shall come as a destruction from the Almighty. Okay? The day of the Lord cometh, cruel both with wrath. That's Revelation chapter 16. I will punish the world for their evil. I will shake the heavens. Okay, actually, I need verse 10. For the stars of the heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be... Okay, so what is the darkening of the sun a sign of? You know what's really awesome? What's awesome is if you can take things that happen in the world and scriptures and then go lay them out and find the words of living prophets who seem to kind of align with these things. So we have President Nelson saying darker signs of the times, right? But do we also have eclipses happening? Solar eclipses. Have any of the brethren talked about solar eclipses? Elder Stevenson.
2017.
Okay, so if we... there we go. Let's go to 2017. I think it's October. Did you see it? Where's that?
2017.
Am I missing it here? Did I go past it?
At the top.
Okay, thanks. There we go. Spiritual eclipse. August 21st, 2017, two rare events occurred. A birthday and an eclipse. Okay, look at that right there. This was the first time this has happened in 99 years. 2017 minus 99 is 1918. So in 1918, the same eclipse happened. In that year, started the Spanish flu pandemic. What's unique about 2017? If you ever want to study COVID, go study 2017 relative to the policies and the gain of function research that made COVID possible. It all happened in 2017. Now, this could be totally I realize this could be totally a coincidence, and I'm okay with that. Okay, let's go to 2 Nephi chapter 12. Now that's from Isaiah. Let's go to 2 Nephi chapter 12. And where are we at here? Now, some of you have probably seen me do this before, so if so, don't help your neighbor too much. Look at what we're mirroring. We're mirroring Isaiah chapter 2. So I'm going to go over to Isaiah chapter 2. Okay, see that? See the correlation just right there in the title? What's going to come next? 2 Nephi 14. 2 Nephi 15. 2 Nephi 16. You see in a pattern? Let's go all the way back. What should I see before? I'm gonna swipe to the right, and I'm gonna see 2 Nephi chapter 11, right? What happened? Why isn't this in 2 Nephi? Look at the very first verse. Do you see the answer right there? Okay, if you don't see it, look at the very first verse here. Sorry, second verse. So Nephi says, I'm going to use chapter 2, but I'm not going to use chapter 1. And why would Nephi use chapter 2? So in the last days, the mountain of the Lord's house will be where? In the top of the mountains. Modern day Jerusalem is not in the top of the mountains. I know people might want to argue that it is. It's just not. And did you guys walk from Jericho? Did you go to Jericho?
We went to Jericho, but we didn't do the walk.
Just when you were there, how far was it? Like, how far is it from Jericho into downtown Jerusalem?
Half-hour drive.
Half hour. So about, I mean, is that like...
Topography is like this.
It is? Okay, interesting. Because Jericho's the lowest point in the world. All right, in the last days, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains. If you study basically Ute, Apache, the meaning is essentially the same. Utah means the place up on high, the people up on high, the place on the top of the mountains. And many nations shall flow unto it. Many people shall go and say, Come ye, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways. Okay, so where is that? Did the Lord establish his house in the last days in Jerusalem?
No.
No. If you're a Latter-day Saint, your answer to that is unequivocally no. Where did the Lord put his capital city? Okay, Salt Lake. Where's our capital temple? Is that, what's the elevation? Okay, he shall judge the nations, rebuke many people. All of our, we brought all these people in, and they turned their swords to plowshares, and they raised up this generations of kids that they sent out to be missionaries, who invited people to come and walk in the light of the Lord. But then all of a sudden we have a shift in verse 6. Everybody in Utah in verses 1 through 5 are doing really good until verse 6. And what happens in verse 6? Okay, what if we look at this from a political perspective? What is the place to the east? What's a soothsayer first? Sure, a politician. I actually think that's a really good definition. Let me show you why. We're going to go to Webster's 1828 dictionary. A foreteller, a prognosticator, one who undertakes to foretell future events without inspiration. That's Washington, D.C. That's our capital here in Utah. It's a bunch of do-gooders who get together in rooms and think that they're so smart they can predict our economic future, the future of our water, the future of our land use. They think they can predict the future building needs. They think they can come up with all the laws that you could need to be happy so that you can continue to send your money to them and also trust them to educate your children. That is what we do, right? So anybody remember the rank and base Christmas specials?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love those as a kid. Remember Santa Claus is coming to town? Remember the Burgermeister Meisterburger? Did you ever know anybody who watched that and said, I want to be that guy when I grow up? But that's what all of our politicians are. They're all Burgermeister Meisterburger. Because what does he do the whole show? He runs around telling people what they can and can't do. He's like, you're breaking the law. And he's got that little guy with him all the time. Was it Smedley? So,
And he looked miserable.
Yeah, right?
He had a miserable aura about him.
Can you imagine, like, all of our politicians today? They're like, that's the guy I wanted to be, and I grew up and became him. Like, none of them think of themselves as the villain in the story. But that's basically what this verse is. It's like, look, we've been forsaken because we turn to Washington, D.C. for our money. How do our rural areas survive? PILT payments, payment in lieu of taxes. Why? Because the government controls all the land and the resources. And the soothsayers, like the Philistines, and they please themselves in the children of strangers.
Okay, that means a lot.
Yeah, right? And I actually think the meaning is not an Epstein quote. It is, what it's basically saying is you've created these industries that inform and raise your children. So Hollywood, the sports industries, right? These are the things that our children look to. These are the strange practices. I told my daughter when we went to the temple, I said, we're going to go to the temple and you're going to see some things. And at first, you're going to be tempted to think of these things as maybe odd. I said, but you can see the same things happening out in the world, and nobody thinks they're odd. Nobody goes to a BYU football game and watches everybody raise their arms up in the air, praising their false god of sports, and thinks, what a bunch of idiots. Right? Nobody thinks that. But you do similar things at the temple and everybody thinks you're weird. Nobody thinks you're weird. Well, I mean, when I was a kid, we had to wear a jock strap in PE, and that was weird. But nobody really thinks that people are weird because they wear particular types of underwear for particular types of sports. But for some reason, if spiritual people wear habiliments of their beliefs to remind them of things that are good, that's odd. So we had kind of this conversation, right, where I was trying to tell my daughter that the only reason you see the temple as different is because all these strangers and idolaters have convinced you that their ways are normal and good. But if you look at them side by side, the false worship that we do to the devil outside the temple is very reflective of the true worship that we do to the Lord in the temple. But because BYU has a football team and the church, pays for it with, your money and our money, and everybody's like, well, it's okay there. And that may be true to some degree. I probably shouldn't get into that. I don't want everybody to dislike me. Okay, if we take a look, if we pull all these, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, can't we look at that verse 6 too, though, as, if I'm getting ahead of you, I'm sorry. But I just, to the marriage ceremony,
Yeah,
when the Lord comes back and finds his bride, as still an idolater, or
Yeah.
still outside of the covenant anyway. But all of verse 6 is outside the covenant.
right.
So it's, I mean, you're taking us through this journey all over again, through the marriage ceremony.
So the consequence of return by the bridegroom the second time is that the punishment must be given.
And that's when they're cast out.
Yes. And yeah,
Okay, well, anyway, I'm sorry.
it's okay.
You're too smart for me, so I'm
definitely not. So one of the things I want to kind of draw your attention to is if we take all of these statements by the brethren, and I'll show you some more in a second, we take all of these scriptures about this day of wrath, the pouring out of this stuff, and we start to look at these phrases like the day of the Lord, the pouring out. We know where this all begins. And I wanted you to see that last chapter. We're going to come back to that in a second, but I wanted you to see that first because I want to line these things up for you so that once we start rolling toward the second coming, we can get a good sense of how we can recognize where it's coming. Okay, I'm just going to cheat here. Okay, so does this bear any similarity to the day of the Lord, wrath, the pouring out of judgments, the darker signs of the times? I mean, there's the day of wrath right there, right in verse 24. How quick does it come? As a whirlwind. Where does it start? Okay, and why does Nephi include this Isaiah chapter about where the house is in the last days? So we know where it starts. We know where the Lord, and why? Because relative to the coming of the bridegroom, those who have been instructed the deepest are the ones who bear the greatest consequence for failure to prepare. And we tend to kind of treat this the opposite. Let me show you. Have you ever wondered why we have a section in the Book of Mormon on infant baptism? You ever wondered that?
And then chronologically, it fits with where it's being debated in the old world.
What is it? Explain that to me.
The same time frame that that it comes up in the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
You know, to the old world, to Alexandria. To Clement,
interesting. Right.
It's the same time frame.
Yeah, fascinating. I see what you're saying. So it's actually literally. Okay. So I think that's interesting. I'm going to give you a different theory. I think that's actually very interesting. Because you have basically Mormon condemning everything that's happening in Constantinople, right? I mean, that's where it happened, right? Where Constantine, is that where it happens? I should know that. Okay. Let's see. For behold, he judgeth, and his judgment is just, and the infant perisheth not, that dieth in his infancy, but men drink damnation to their souls, except they humble themselves and become as little children. Natural man's an enemy to God. Okay. Am I in the wrong one? I am in the wrong one. How in the world did I do that? What am I missing here? I thought for sure it was in the chapter heading. There we go. Okay. Okay, what's he say it is? Gross error. Behold, I came in the world not to call the righteous, but sinners. It's a solemn mockery. This is pretty strong language, right? Repentance and baptism unto those who are accountable and capable of committing sin. Little children need no baptism. Okay, has this ever been a problem in our church? In our church. Little children cannot repent. Woe unto such who believe it, for they're in danger of death and hell. Okay, there we go. Look at verse 22. Look at the red. What's this chapter really about? I'm not saying it's not really about infant baptism, okay, but what's the point he's getting at in red? So who is being equated to a little child relative to judgment in this chapter? Anybody who wasn't given the law. What does that mean? Okay, so for the power of redemption cometh on all them that have no law, wherefore he that is not condemned, or he that is under no condemnation, cannot repent. And unto such baptism availeth nothing, but it is a mockery before God. Right? Denying the mercies of Christ and the power of the Holy Spirit and putting trust in dead works. Okay, now let's look at the reference. What's that? Who gets baptized 100 times? Mormons do. Right? So what's a dead work? Thinking you can keep going to the temple, and if you go enough, you'll get into the celestial kingdom. One day you'll get there, and the temple president will be waiting for you in the hall, and he'll be like, you did it. You've gone 10,999 times. I'm here with your key to the celestial kingdom. So I often ask people, how many times do you have to go? Oh, yeah. I've been once, so I'm going to make it. But it's also not once. Are we supposed to go? Absolutely. Okay, so if we come back here, who does it start with? All these people, the modern, let me do one more thing. It starts on the Lord house. It starts with the modern Jews. Have you ever wondered why I think it's in, yeah. I'm going to show you that. That's exactly where I was going. If I can find it. I think it's in 109. There we go. I could be wrong. Where's the verse in the Doctrine and Covenants where Joseph calls the Lamanites Jews? Anybody know that? I thought it was 109. Why would he do that? Why would Joseph refer to the Lamanites as Jews?
Or disbelief. The rebellion.
They were giving the gospel.
You're probably all right. Okay? What if I propose to you, let me do it this way. Keep that in mind. Don't forget that, okay? If anybody finds that scripture, let me know, because I'd love for people to see it instead of have me say it. Okay. Where's that? Utah, Israel. In the Old Testament, the Dead Sea in Hebrew is the Salt Sea. It's not called the Dead Sea ever. That is a translation issue. Those are maps comparing Utah, two Dead Seas, both with a Jordan River, both with a fresh body of water, both with a sacred city near the Dead Sea or the Great Salt Lake. Rehoboam is the first king of the southern kingdom of Judah. Zedekiah is the last. If you compare Utah's governors, right, we're tracking with them. And under the 20th king, the southern kingdom of Judah was destroyed completely. We are 2 away from our 20th. So, what's happening here? Why the similarities? What is a Jew? If I were to, again, some of you have seen this before. Oh, sorry. I'm going to find the right, okay, there we go. Oh, that, you're not moving.
1927.
Oh, okay, thank you.
1927.
Will you just read it? Would you mind?
Which is my word to the Gentile, that soon it may go to the Jew, of whom the Lamanites are a remnant.
Okay.
Is that the one?
Yes, thank you. So the Lamanites are a remnant of who? How? But Jews aren't Israel, they're just part of the house of Israel. So how wouldn't you say that they're a remnant of the house of Israel? We don't think that the Lamanites were of Judah, do we?
Well, the Amalekites were.
True, so they might have mixed.
Right.
But we believe Lehi was Manasseh.
Right.
So it seems like the most obvious correlation would be Laman and Lemuel are Manasseh. But here we're kind of getting this concept they're a remnant of the Jews. So let me see if I can get you to see what I think it means, okay? And I'm showing you those pictures of Utah for a reason. That's not even good. Let's make that bigger. Okay. How do you say that?
Judah.
How do you say that? Now, notice you really should have spelled it like that. Right? And because that's really how you say it. And a Y in Hebrew is what? Oh, that's horrible.
Yod.
Yeah.
Yod.
Is it Yod?
It's Yod.
I thought it was a J. Isn't it? But can it be both? Yeah. Or a J is a Yod. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right. See, okay, we're on the same page. So it's a Yod. So that's how you'd spell it. And that's why everybody from Mexico says it right. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. So, what's going on there?
Nothing, it's just a coincidence.
It's just a coincidence, right? That the anti-Mormons gave us the name of the southern kingdom of Utah. Now, do you think most people in Utah are Utes? Utahns or Israel? Because President Nelson invited us to become part of the house of Israel. So are most people in Utah identifying as Utahns, Americans, Trump supporters, Democrats, Republicans, or are most people identifying themselves as of the house of Israel? If you identify yourself as anything other than the house of Israel, then that is the name you have taken upon yourself. And when the Jews rejected the Lord, they chose their nationality and their politics and their own beliefs over the Lord. So he gave them their own name. They wanted to be known as Americans, so he let them be known as Americans, and they were destroyed when all the other Americans were destroyed. Does that make sense? So you can live in Christ or you can die an American. And the Jews said, we'd rather die a Jew. And the Lamanites said, we'd rather die as Lamanites. We're not going to join the Nephites. And the name of the Nephite in the end of the Book of Mormon just meant those who were followers of Christ. So we've been invited to do the same thing. And we're literally replaying everything these ancient civilizations did to get themselves destroyed. If we go back to 112, where did I leave actually? I feel like I wasn't at 112, but I'm going to go there. Okay, we know where it's going to begin. All this wrath, all this judgment, the things that John the Revelator sees, the things that Nephi sees, that President Nelson says we have front row seats to, all of them begin upon the house of the Lord. And all those who have professed to know his name and have not known him, who have chosen to be Utahns or whatever it is that you are proud of, right? Maybe you're a lover of the Constitution. And maybe that's your religion, right? That's how you define your life. I used to do that. I thought the Lord wanted me to go protect the Constitution. So to do that, I became a Republican. Because how can I protect the Constitution if I don't join that?
Fraternity.
Yeah, I was about to say rat, bastard, rotten, no good, Gadianton organization known as the Republican Party. No offense if you're a Republican. I don't like Democrats either. I hate you all mutually. Just kidding. I don't really hate you. I love you. I can't afford to hate. Yeah, that's right. I can't afford to hate anybody. I'm joking. Okay, so we know where it begins. I would argue we even have been given how it begins. President Nelson calls the hinge point in 2019. Now, I struggled with this for so long. Why would a prophet of God use a term that is so amorphous that you can never really know what he's saying? What does that mean, hinge point?
Because it's a parable.
It's a parable. I agree, it's a parable. You're not going to be able to figure it out.
It's going to have multiple symbols.
Sure. Okay, so would it be fair to say that we probably ought to pay attention to everything President Nelson says thereafter as being the description of the parable or the hinge point? So if President Nelson says this is the hinge point, you then just watch what he does thereafter. And if the thing that he does is different than over here on the other side of the hinge, what does that probably indicate? So if over here we have 7 mentions of the second coming in 48 years, okay? And on this side of the hinge point, we have 14, double the number of mentions.
Isn't it Elder Anderson at his talk at BYU that said that the hinge is it starts moving slowly right at the point, but the far up.
Oh wait, I don't know this one.
It's faster. It was either Elder Anderson or Elder Cook here recently.
Oh, wow. I don't know. I don't know.
So think about it starting slow.
I actually get to teach. Anyway, never mind.
Yeah, so slow. And as you get a little bit further,
Right.
the further you get from it, the faster it moves.
That would be
Until it hits you in the
consistent.
face.
That would actually be consistent with Revelation chapter 1, the things which must shortly come to pass, which means they will come quickly.
It says accelerate.
Oh, yeah.
Pace. So acceleration means it's moving faster and faster. It's not a given speed limit. There's no speed limit.
Okay.
Accelerating.
I'm going to propose to you that I agree with all of you, but I would specifically place the hinge point at Revelation chapter 14, 15, and 16. And here's why. I've shown this before, and I don't want to belabor this point because I'm not very good at it. But if we look at the nature of the feast days that the Lord set up with ancient Israel, those feast days are seasonal in nature. So we would have 3 feast days in the first half of the year. We would have a middle feast day, which is still actually in the first half of the year. And then we would have 3 feast days in the second half of the year. One would, the first one's Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, Feast of First Fruits, Shavuot, which is, what's the term in English? Feast of,
Feast of the Tabernacles, isn't it?
no, that's the end. What's the one in the middle? The late spring. Ingathering, the Feast of Ingathering, I think is what it's called. No, that's not a Feast of Ingathering. This is Pentecost.
Yeah.
So Shavuot, basically Pentecost. I'm just going to put Shavuot. This is Rosh Hashanah, trumpets. I'm going to put Rosh Hashanah. Yom Kippur, Feast of Atonement, and then Sukkot, or the Feast of Tabernacles, the ingathering. This, I think, is the ingathering where you bring your tent, face it towards King Benjamin, he gives a big talk. Okay, so this one, the very first one, you know that it's time to start reckoning for Passover if you see the green ears of barley, or green kernel of barley. And so if you're an observer of the times and seasons, you would be watching your barley flock or your barley crop. You would notice its green bud, and that's what Abib means. Abib is spring. It's the Rosh Chodesh, the first month of the new year. Starts roughly at March, April. You'd go out, you'd see the little green barley, and you'd see the new moon, and you would start reckoning time. And you would count to the 14th day, to 10th day to bring in the lamb, 14th day, kill the lamb, have the Feast of Unleavened Bread. That's your Passover week. So all of this is happening in early spring, and it's a barley harvest. So we have barley, early spring. Now, the reason first fruits is tied to this is because these all kind of blend to one ceremony, 1 week, where you're offering at the end of this week, the 8th day, the new week, which is why we have a Sabbath on Sunday, because the offering was made, and the first fruits of God are Christ, and he's the first offering of barley. So do you know what they would do? They'd get a wave offering of barley, and they would offer it by raising their hands up and down to God as they offered this barley offering. That's why it's called a wave offering. Then they would count about 50 days to the late spring harvest, where you would glean the remainder of the barley and you'd harvest your wheat. And now your spring's over. What does that mean in second coming symbology if spring is over? Summer's here. What's the summer harvest?
Grapes.
And what kind of harvest is that? Is wrath. The wine press. I think that's the hinge point. We have left the wheat harvest. The wheat and the tares have been separated. And I'll show you why when we come back to the book of Revelation a little bit later. But how would you know that? How would you know you've left the wheat harvest? Would you expect darker signs of the times? Clayton?
So isn't the push to gather Israel kind of related to pushing in as much of the wheat harvest as we can into the garners?
Yes. And there's a reason, because you're about to burn everything. So you want to get them safe inside their places of security. So if we had a prophet who was like, hey, create a place of security, might be indicative of something. While he's saying things like time is running out. President Nelson, about the only thing he could have done more is show up at conference with a cardboard box over his head that said the end is near. And then people would still be like, that's very unprofessional of him. So notice what's happening here. There's an interesting point in the middle where Peter is present at this day of Pentecost. And why is Pentecost important? If we're looking backwards in time to these old feasts that are already done, what does Pentecost represent in this cycle of feasts? What's that? Isn't it the Gentiles? We're finally going to gather in everybody. There's no more unclean animals. Peter sees the unclean animal being brought in. So when Pentecost happens, it's the opening of the gospel to everybody. And they're going to go out and they're going to start teaching the northern areas. Paul's going to go up into Rome. And so the Gentiles will be gathered in. So if the wheat harvest starts approximately 34 AD, when does the early wheat harvest and barley harvest end? Let me give you some hints. I know where to just go. I'm going to skip a little around here. 6, is it? There we go. See verse 6? I heard a voice in the midst of 4 beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny and 3 measures of barley for a penny. So you've got barley and wheat. This is the Passover through Shavuot harvest. And if it's that much for a penny, you're heading to a famine. So when do we see the famine come upon the world and the wheat and the barley stops being harvested? Literally. Would you agree with me that it is about 385 to 421 AD? And why?
Because all that's left is John.
All that's left is John. And Moroni, if he lives, he says, I don't know if I'm going to get to live. So that we go into this famine. So if we're in this famine, when does the wheat harvest pick back up? Because the barley harvest is over. So when does the wheat harvest pick back up?
Is the barley harvest the pioneers?
Barley would be the ancient Jews and Nephites. And the wheat appears to be the Gentiles because it happens late in spring after Shavuot. So what if it ends around 420 and starts again in 1620? How would it happen? Do you have to plant the latter wheat? Where do you plant the latter wheat? Do you plant them in Jerusalem? Where do they get planted? America. When do they get planted in America? The Mayflower. When does the harvest begin? So when is the hinge point going to be? It just kind of hits you in the face. And so the wheat harvest is over when this separates the wheat and the tares. And if we go back to prophetic parallels, he calls the hinge point. Within 1 year of the hinge point, the very temple that he proclaims it from closes because of COVID. How do you separate wheat and tares? Find out who wants to close temples. Find out which nations will close temples and stop all religious services. Because the best way to heal a pandemic is to stop people from thinking about Jesus. Right?
Makes sense.
It's the best way to do it. Send everybody home and tell them you can't go to church. That actually was one of the greatest times of my life. So we have all these crazy things that start happening at this point in time. I've already showed you this verse. Okay, there's that spring 2020, and that guy drops his trumpet on that day. And he drops it. Remember, the Lord says, upon my house it shall begin. In the latter days, the Lord's house will be established in the top of the mountains. This is the capital city. And it gets shaken. His trumpet falls out in an earthquake that over 2 hours will shake the promised land. So I'm going to shorten this here. I'm not going to show you too much more after this. I do want to show you one more thing, which is this. President Nelson will call a solemn assembly. He will basically read what Moroni's trumpet represents. So if you think of the book of Revelation, you know how it says an angel poured something out or an angel blew a horn? When an angel blows a horn, what is an angel in Scripture? A divine messenger from the presence of God. Okay? So a divine messenger is clothed with authority to deliver a message by keys. Is President Nelson a divine messenger with keys? When he speaks, is it as a trumpet blast? So if we think of President Nelson's effort here in a solemn assembly as a book of Revelation type proclamation by an angel blowing a trumpet, he's figuratively blowing the trumpet of Moroni from the sacred grove in 2020. Okay, now let's go back to Isaiah. We know where we are. Okay, we're in Utah. We know when we are. We're in the last days. We know that judgment has come upon the people of Utah for falling to idolatry. Prior to the coming of the Lord, like ancient Judah, Utah is in adultery. Not the brethren. Okay, not the brethren. The people. Because the people love silver and gold. They are full of idols. They worship the work of their own hands. The Lord basically says, you better go hide because you're all about to be leveled. I'm going to bring this destruction. And then he starts to basically list his legal grievances against the state of Utah. For behold, the Lord doth take away from Salt Lake City and from Utah the stay and the staff, the whole stay of bread and the whole stay of water. So you're not going to get everything. You're only going to get little anecdotal warnings. Now, I would argue you're like getting a flashing billboard in the face from President Nelson. But the average member of the church who is not awake, who is not caring about the second coming, who is possessed of the spirit of Antichrist, who denies the coming of the Lord, is going to be in a state of basically spiritual famine. And I also think that this kind of means the Lord's going to restrain that which the brethren say to us. So Elder Stevenson might get up and give a talk about a solar eclipse. He'll say 99 years ago this happened. But he won't say 3 years from now you will be struck by a pandemic and it will represent the hinge point and the separation of the wheat and the tares. The mighty man, the man of war. These are all things we're going to lose. The captain of 50. What's that?
Laban.
Laban was a manifestation of the organization of Israel from the days of Moses into groups of tens, 50s, hundreds, thousands. It was, in our time, the council of 50, which was how God organized Joseph and the brethren into a council in our time. And the leftover parts of the council of 50, which the Lord gave to us through Joseph, was called in Utah the caucus system. And what happened to that? It's gone. So as Isaiah sees, we lose these things. Children are our princes. Babes rule over us. Look at verse 5. You know what type of political system that is? That's called a democracy. Right? Isn't that what verse 5 is? Have you ever read our founding fathers' statements about democracy? One of the worst types of government you could ever have is a democracy. Why? Because you're ruled over by your neighbors. And as long as your neighbors agree with you, you're happy. But the moment, like look at Salt Lake City. Have you seen the hubbub in Salt Lake City about how the federal government has purchased a big warehouse out in the west side and they want to turn it into an ICE detention facility, and the mayor of Salt Lake City is freaking out. And I'm like, well, you live in a democracy. I thought you'd just like that. Don't you like it when people make you do stuff you don't want to do? That's what we've been doing for 100 years.
They do the roads in Salt Lake, whether the neighbors want it or not.
Right.
Trump them down and nobody can get through.
Well, anybody ever heard of curb and gutter? Building permits? Like taxes? When a man shall take hold of his brother, swear, okay, the shoe of their countenance, what's the show of your countenance? Doth witness against them, something about their face. Woe unto their soul, they've rewarded evil unto themselves. As for my people, children are their oppressors. That's us. You know what your number one expenditure is? Education. How's that going? Anywhere. It's horrible. I'm not going to say that. Yeah, I'm not going to say anything about that. I'll just stop right there. The Lord standeth up to plead and standeth to judge. The Lord will enter into judgment with the ancients of his people and the princes thereof. I would argue that is exactly what is happening in Revelation chapter 14. And I'll show you why. I want to come back to this, so I'm going to mark that real quick. Who are the ancients of the Lord's people? Who is the Ancient of Days? Who's the second most Ancient of Days? Okay, you see. So, who are the princes? Is Hiram a prince? Is Joseph F. Smith? Okay, let's go to Revelation 14. Okay, I don't know if I should do Revelation 14 without doing 13. 13 is pretty depressing sometimes, though. Okay, I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000. These are the ancients. These are the princes. And what do they want to do? What are the angels in heaven always asking the Lord to be able to do? Destroy. Let us go get this thing over with. And the Lord's always like, no, it's okay. Be patient. I love that the angels are like, no, let's just go burn the whole sucker down. Right? And I heard a voice, and they sang a new song, and I saw another angel fly, having the President Nelson, okay, having Moroni's trumpet in April of 2020 in the Sacred Grove, and President Nelson blew it. He blew the trumpet. And he's saying in the same moment, the darker signs of the times are here. Prepare places of security. The time is now. Make preparations you've never made before, because the hour of judgment has come. That's President Nelson. And there follows another one, President Oaks, who will, if he hasn't already, say, Babylon is fallen, is fallen. So pay attention to President Oaks. Listen carefully to his message. And then a third angel. I don't know what to think about that one. If President Oaks ever saw this, he'd be like, what's up with that? Like, I'm going to live till the Lord comes. I'm like, well, I don't know about that. If any man worship the beast in his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the... Because what harvest are we in? We're in the summer harvest. We're in the grape harvest. The wheat harvest is over. And some people might say, well, Revelation 13 hasn't happened. It happened and was over 109 years ago. Okay, have you seen me do a presentation on that one? Has anybody not seen my presentation on Revelation 13? Okay, only I won't do that tonight. Okay, so, well, let me go back. Maybe I should. Okay.
Morgan?
Yeah.
Are you going to talk about the Nazareth?
I could. Do you want me to?
You have to tie it in with the 2020 Palmyra.
Here's what I'll do. I have a feeling my voice may not last. What if I just go easy mode?
If we all pray for you, you're supposed to.
Yeah. I'll just. Thank you. Okay, I'll do that. And that'll actually give me an opportunity to go back to 2000 and then maybe come back to the book of Revelation. Hey. Oh, thanks.
Lemon.
Oh,
Sunny lemon.
and that's for me too. Thank you. You're so nice. The legendary Mitch Burton.
What was the Jeremiah reference?
Ooh, that's hot. Oh, the Jeremiah.
What was that Jeremiah, the reference that you just about did, but it was, what was that one?
I'll show you. That's actually a really good one. Okay. I got to teach, come follow me on Sunday, tomorrow. And you know what it's about? Joseph. Okay, I want to show you something awesome before I show you this, okay? Remind me to come back to this. But I want to make the point by using Joseph. Anybody remember the chapters? I think it's 37 through 41, right? Did I have the wrong ones? Am I teaching the wrong thing tomorrow?
50 is next week.
Okay, you're scaring me. Okay. Jacob loves and favors Joseph. God the Father loves and favors Christ. You agree? Christ is hated by his brothers, the house of Israel. Okay? Joseph, in similitude of Christ, sees the house of Israel making obeisance to him. Agreed? But instead, Christ's brothers, i.e. the house of Israel, cast him into a pit and kill him. Are you seeing a parallel yet? Who is Joseph in similitude of? Okay, so this whole chapter is about Christ. Next chapter. Judah has 3 sons by Tamar. Now we're giving the ancestry of Christ through Tamar. What is the state of Judah when Christ comes? It's right here. Because of the idolatry, or adulterous state of Judah when Christ comes, Judah will reject, the Jews will reject Christ. Christ will come, but after he comes, he will then go where? Into a prison, to the spirit world, where he will unlock death and hell. So here's Christ's 3 days in the spirit world. Make sense?
He also has the 2 prisoners next to him side by side.
Yes.
Where he did on the cross
one dies.
as well.
So,
And then 3 days later, they were released from prison.
okay, so all of this is about Christ, and if this is about Christ in the spirit world, what does the next chapter have to be about?
The new life.
Or second coming. So, did any of the brethren talk about the fat kind and the lean kind? Yeah. So tomorrow we get to have an amazing lesson about the second coming, because everything is about the second coming. You just have to start looking for it. And once you start looking for it, you can't not see it anymore. So what does...
What time's your meeting tomorrow?
I don't know if I should say that. If you turn off all the cameras, I'll tell you. Because the last time I was here and gave out some personal information, the greatest blessings of my life unfolded thereafter. Well, relatively high blessings. I'm not going to put you on the same level as my wife and kids. But you see what I mean. So, I would tell you, but I don't want to do it on camera. Because then if you come out and visit us, you might actually want to move to Mount Pleasant and be my neighbor. What's that? Yeah, maybe. Hey.
Sorry, one more question. I teach
Sure.
it at 1 tomorrow. Do you have a PowerPoint you can send to me?
I don't think I put it together for this one. Otherwise, I totally would. I'll send you my whole PowerPoint. Okay. If we liken the scriptures to ourselves, we would never look at that and say, declare ye in Judah. We'd say, declare ye in Utah. And publish in Salt Lake City and say, President Nelson, blow Moroni's trumpet. Tell the people to gather the house of Israel. Say, call a solemn assembly, which he did. Tell the sisters, oh my gosh, let's see, I got to remember this now. Do you know what oh my goodness. Okay, you see where he says, let us go into the defense cities? Remember President Nelson said, prepare places of security? Do you know what Sukkot is? Do you know what's the term for the Sukkot? Isn't it like plural?
It's the tents.
What's the shortened one? The sukkah, or if the tent, the sukkah, or you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you know what I'm getting at?
I don't have an answer for you.
So what that thing is it's your refuge. So get into your refuge. Why didn't President Nelson say prepare places of security in April? Why did he wait to talk to the women in October? Because October, okay, I'll bet you money. I'm taking a chance here. I'm probably going to be wrong. It is a feast.
It's Sukkot.
What was the day of Sukkot that year?
It usually very closely coincides with General Conference or just before.
What in the world?
Ultimately, you can count on all the meetings the brethren and church authorities have before the final meetings on Saturday and Sunday fall in Sukkot.
Okay, look at that. Sukkot is happening while President Nelson is saying, prepare places of security. Sukkot is about taking your refuge, aligning it to the message of the temple and the temple itself, because you're about to dwell with the Lord. Set up your standard towards Zion, retire. What's that mean? It's not what we think of it like as today. It means get out. Stay not, for I will bring evil from the north. The lion is come up from his thicket. This is Ezra's eagle, which means, what's the lion represent in Ezra's eagle? Does anybody not know Ezra's eagle? It's the end of the eagle. So if the lions come up, the day of the eagle is over. The eagle's about to be burned. The destroyer of the Gentiles is on his way. Where are the Gentiles at? He's gone forth from his place to make thy land desolate, and thy cities shall be laid waste without an inhabitant. Okay, I remember what I forgot to do. I forgot to finish this off. So, in Isaiah, sorry, I can't believe I did this. Remember, if we're in the grape harvest, right? If we've passed that hinge point, and now we're in summer. Summer is fast. Summer is wrathful. And judgments come. Wrath's going to be poured out. And this is all wedding imagery. And we're in Utah. We would expect to see some language about the women or the churches, i.e. the people. What is a church? Have you ever thought about that? Like, have you ever stopped thinking about the way you culturally think of a church and actually asked, how does the Lord define a church?
System.
So that's how I think of it. I think of it as a system or an organization. I think of it kind of corporate. I would argue, if we go back to the older definitions in the Old Testament, it's an assemblage of people. Okay? And if there's only two churches, right, save two churches only, that kind of changes the dynamic of an organized church. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the Lord's church. Does the Lord have other sheep? Are they in the church of the Lamb of God? Are they the same?
No.
I don't think so. They could be, and if they were, I wouldn't be surprised, right? But I think the Lord loves all of his children and all of his believers.
They can be if they are incorporated in, but they aren't as they stand. So, I mean, it's kind of like...
Well, couldn't a person who really loves Christ be a member of the Church of the Lamb of God?
We've been told repeatedly, like earlier classes anyway, that we'll be surprised who is there
Yeah.
and who isn't there. So yeah, they can be. But if you're talking about an assemblage, have we,
I think then it becomes, I think an assemblage becomes a little bit, well, I could spend too long there, I'm not going to do it. Let me just go here. Look at the distinction between the concept of a church versus daughters of Zion. If I said the Church of the Lamb of God, I think you could argue it encompasses more than members of the church. I don't think you can do that here. You could argue that Zion is all of North and South America. So what would the daughter of all in North and South America be? Maybe everywhere else. What I would propose is that Zion is the center place. Okay? Zion is the epitome of what the church should be. So what is a daughter of Zion? Would it be a stake? Could it be a city?
Be immature.
It's the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City.
The Real Housewives of Salt Lake.
all the states of Zion, so that would be worldwide,
Okay.
not just North and South America.
Could it also be individuals? I tend to think that this is a conversation with very literally the stakes of the church, i.e. the daughters. If Zion is the center stake, her daughters are her stakes. And the Lord is basically saying, because remember what I didn't show you DNC 115. Oh, geez. The stakes of Zion will be for a refuge from the storm. So how can your stake be a refuge if it's guilty of this following wedding imagery? Is your stake not your leaders? Okay, don't go there. That's not good. Are the members of your community haughty? Do they walk with stretched forth necks, wanton eyes, mincing as they go, making a tinkling with their feet? Will your people around you be smitten by the Lord to discover the hidden parts or sins of your community? Will the Lord take away these things? Yes, He will. So all of this is kind of wedding imagery. Are we clothing ourselves with the robes of Babylon, or are we clothing ourselves with our temple covenants and that which we've promised the Lord to do? Right? Do you see that imagery here? And if this stake, and a stake being an assemblage of people, your culture of your stake. So let's say you live in Salt Lake City, right? I just don't know how to look at you and be like, I bet you're going to be good there. I have a hard time. You probably could be, and I'm just being too judgmental. But, right, will your community be in a state of that described by Isaiah? Will your men fall by the sword, your mighty in war? Will your gates lament and mourn and be left desolate? In that day, 7 women shall take hold of one man. It's hard to cover without going into the book of Revelation chapter 1. The 7 women are the church of the first dispensation under Adam, the church of the second dispensation under Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Peter, and Joseph Smith. The 7 churches, the 7 women. That is Adam-on-Diam in language. This is the reunification of the dispensations in the fullness of times at that meeting. In that day shall the branch of the Lord be beautiful. He that is left in Zion, he that remaineth in Salt Lake City, shall be called holy, even every one that is written among the living in Jerusalem. When the Lord shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion. The Lord is about to wash away the filth of our stakes and our cities in these LDS-controlled communities, and shall have purged the blood of Jerusalem from the midst thereof by the spirit of judgment, by the spirit of burning. And the Lord will create upon every dwelling place of Mount Zion, and upon her assemblies a cloud and a smoke by day, and the shining of a flaming fire by night. For upon all the glory shall be a defense. Okay. Look at verse 8. There is a storm before this occurs, right? Because otherwise, how do you get all the destruction that just got described? And there's a storm when? After this. Do you see why? Why would there be a refuge if all of the judgment's over? Okay. If any man doesn't want to have to take up his sword, he must needs flee to Zion. That's right here. So you see the pattern that is laid out? I'm going to destroy my people first. I'm going to destroy the Gentiles. And then I'm going to destroy Babylon all over the whole world. So there's these stages. And the book of Revelation, guess what it's about? It's about the stages. And so if we can understand the book of Revelation and these other prophetic writings, we can actually see the unfolding of the different stages of destruction and get a sense of where to be. And let me give you...
Just a quick comment on verse 5 there.
Yes.
The other symbolism I'm seeing is the Israelites in the desert pursued by Egypt, by Pharaoh. And the cloud and the smoke are, Jehovah.
Yeah.
Defending them, the glory of Jehovah. So it's the symbolism for us. We've got Jehovah as our defense.
Yeah. So go ahead.
I'm going to add one more thing that ties into this because, they've taken away the women's session of General Conference.
Right.
Unless you listen to the women's broadcast for the Relief Society a week ago. And it was warning, 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 warning.
There's what is it? I don't even know what this thing is.
It was the Relief Society General Broadcast for the birthday of
They counted 70 different warnings in that one broadcast.
Okay, you know what's interesting about that? I wrote my daughter's on a mission in Arkansas, and I wrote her a message because I've been studying Ruth and Naomi. Mm-hmm. And Ruth and Naomi, if I remember right, Ruth is a Gentile.
Yes, she's a Moabite.
And she's a gleaner. Mm-hmm. So she's called to finish off the field, right? When you look at these women in these parables.
She's a widow and does not have anyone to sustain her.
Right. Uh-huh. So what if the age change in the sister missionaries is to get the gleaners out into the field, and we're in these women, in the meetings of the women, we're getting more warning information being given to, because in all these stories, Ruth, Esther, they're saving Abigail, the story of Abigail, they're saving all the men around them.
Well, the Eberkenego.
The what?
The description that I slaughter the pronunciation. It's it's the description of Eve in Hebrew.
Oh.
That it means help me.
Ebenezer.
The King James.
Oh, he's Ebenezer. Ezer Kenegdo. Okay.
And so the King James translators gave it as helpmeet, and that's just been destroyed as far as how it's been understood, because it actually is more the rock of salvation given unto.
Mm-hmm. I gotta go home and be nicer to my wife. That's what that means.
Sorry, I distracted you.
That's all right. And before I go back, I'll just show you that one. Arise, temple imagery, that the gathering together upon the land of Zion upon her stakes may be for a defense and for a refuge from the storm, from wrath. Okay, so I mentioned this concept. Okay, here's when Christ is born, right? 1 AD. Here's when Christ ministers to the Jews. Here's when Christ comes to the Nephites. Has anybody not heard of a chiasmus? Okay, has anybody not heard the term, the first shall be last, last shall be first? So if we chiasmus this and put the last first, these are the Nephites. Let's just pretend, okay? This is not for real. Do not write that down. Let's just pretend. When would he come to the modern day Jews at Armageddon? Again, do not take these things to the bank, okay? And that it probably should be 37 actually, but because of the way we do reckoning of time. But so let's just do that. When would he come in glory? Just this is a hypothetical exercise. 67. So a storm. If you don't want to take up the sword, you must needs flee to Zion. So there's a storm, there's an ongoing storm, and you can see this in the book of Isaiah and in Nephi, and it gives you locations, and it gives you the order of destruction. And it starts with the Lord's people. So, okay. Where did I promise to go after this? I'm forgetting. Oh, yeah, now I remember. 20, the Maseroth.
It kind of ties in, I think.
Yeah. I really need to do better studying the meaning of Maseroth. I can give you a decent attempt. Oh, God. I can't, actually. I'm not even going to try right now. But Maseroth is basically the Hebrew system of reckoning the movement of the constellations and the Maseroth stars, or planetary objects. So in the Maseroth, you have, as you would imagine, 12 constellations, and you have 7 planetary objects. I'm just going to say planets, and you have the sun. And those planets are Venus, Mercury, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, the moon, and the earth. So there's 8 plus the 12. And the Maseroth was the way that the ancient peoples could see the heavenly pageant and scriptures play out in the sky. It was the Lord set these things, I might have this here actually, to be signs and for seasons. So you could know the months. Does anybody actually know how to track a month by the moon? Like, we just don't know how to do these things anymore. But they did, and they could know how to plant and also see basically prophecies in the sky. And they also governed their feasts by these things. And all of this, so you have what are called the Moadim, which is the Lord's way of kind of reckoning time with his people in the ancient times. Still works today, and feasts. And then you have the Mazaroth, which was the planetary system of constellations set for signs. I wish I'd showed you Elder Anderson's talk, where he actually talks about our appointment with the Lord. So you look at that, and he talks about a season in his talk at BYU, Idaho. We get DNC, if you ever want to connect the ancient stars and Mazaroth with the latter days, you do it through DNC 88. Probably one of the greatest sections on the Mazaroth, but it's just not, it doesn't say that. I'm not going to go into that. Okay, when is the beginning of the new millennium? It's 2001. What's that?
Cardinal or ordinal?
Yeah, I don't even know what that means.
It's basically exactly what you're getting into.
Okay, that's it. Okay. So the Book of Mormon has 3 calendar systems with the Nephites. One is number of years from the time Lehi left Jerusalem. Okay. The other one is the first year of the reign of judges. And then the next one is the reckoning of time from the sign of Christ's birth. It uses all of them. Even after they changed their reckoning of time because of this sign that Samuel the Lamanite prophesied would happen, even after they do this, you'll still notice in the Book of Mormon that it will say the 93rd year of the reign of the judges, even though they changed the reckoning of their time at the 92nd year. So it's kind of confusing. So I actually laid out a chart. I made a spreadsheet. And it's not by any means perfect. And I don't know if it will pull up. No, there it is. Where I took the first year of the reign of the judges and compared it to our time. So, year 1 of the reign of the judges up there, the BC date, and our time. So, like you'll notice, King Mosiah, King Benjamin, King Mosiah, King Joseph, King Brigham, King John Taylor. You know they were all sustained as kings in the Council of 50. And then we go into this reign of judges. In 1909, why does it become the reign of judges? In 1909. Because we joined the Union in 1897.
So they can finish it.
Really? That's actually interesting because money is exactly where I'm going with this. This is when we really began to change our monetary system. It's when President Taft came to Utah. And it's when they met, it's when the guys met on the Jekyll Island and planned the Federal Reserve System. And Utah had to be conquered for that system to work. So, does anybody know the history of Utah? We had our own government. Who deposed our governor?
United States.
The United States. Oh boy, I left off in Revelation 14, didn't I? Oh, that's where I left off. Okay, I'm not going to do that yet. Do we need to take a break?
You do. It's 7:35. You want to take a break for a minute?
Take a break for
Yeah, let's do that. So, in the Book of Mormon, we get a sign of a star that they have never seen. Okay? So if the sign of Christ's birth is a singular star, what would the sign of his second coming be? Now, if his first coming is the coming of a baby in a mortal tabernacle, there's nothing glorious about that to the average human. But his second coming will be seen by everyone and will be glorious. Does that make sense? So if we just kind of go through a brainstorm of, I know what this one is. It's a singular star representing a baby coming down into a mortal tabernacle. It is a condescension, okay? The next time he comes down, he will come down with all the hosts of heaven. So what would that sign look like? Just him, okay? Just him, one star. Him and all the hosts of heaven. What are the hosts of heaven? His name as Lord of hosts is Sabaoth. The Lord of Sabaoth, the Lord of the hosts. Well, what are the hosts? They're right there. Those are the hosts of heaven. So you need a sign where you see all those things at the same time in what color? Red. So our problem is that nobody looks for this. Nobody knows about this. We don't study the Maseroth. We don't know of the ancient signs. So if you go back to the year 2000, well, before we do that, you have a star that the Nephites see. And what happens before, prophetically speaking, that star is seen?
Sight of it.
They're told that they'll see it by Samuel. And they have a prophet named Nephi who is pleading that the people be spared and that the sign come. So before the sign comes, Nephi is pleading and testifying of the coming of the Lord. How far before did Samuel the Lamanite show up? 5 years. So go back 5 years from that. Did we have I don't know if this is correct. Somebody said this to me the other day. Howard W. Hunter was the prophet 5 years before this. For how long? And then where did he go? Back home, never to be seen again. And was he a Lamanite or a Nephite? He was a Lamanite. Why was he a Lamanite? He was a convert to the church. He was born outside the covenant. And did he ever have modern stones thrown at him?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, no, somebody said this the other day. Wasn't he the one?
He was the one who was doing the BYU devotional, and Cody Judy
And he
attacked him and tried to blow him up.
Right.
So when did that happen? Was he the prophet?
That was 1992, but I don't think he was a prophet yet.
Okay.
I think he was the president of the Quorum of the 12.
Well, somebody was saying, the other day when I was talking about this, somebody said, oh yeah, somebody tried to shoot him. And I was like, well yeah, there was something that happened. I never went to look it up. So I was curious if we had more correlations there than just the ones I was thinking about. Okay, now, does anybody know, let's see if I can find it. Exceeding, there we go. Look at that quote. Notice anything familiar there? Do you know who said that? That's President Hunter in 1994. The statement that made it into the Proclamation on the Family about the calamities is from President Hunter in 1994. So we have a Samuel the Lamanite 5 years before the sign who warns that the Nephites will be destroyed if they don't repent. We have a prophet 6 years before and a proclamation 5 years before that says if we do not uphold the family, we will be destroyed. All right, now remember they have Samuel the Lamanite, they have somebody testifying that Christ is coming before the sign, and then they get the sign of the star. Do we get anybody testifying before the sign of Christ in a unique way? This one was tricky for me. You recognize that? Do you remember when they gave this? Like in January of 2000. Who sends out a proclamation in January? So we have the same pattern unfolding. We have a Samuel the Lamanite figure in the form of a proclamation on the family 5 years before a sign, which is preceded in January by a witness of the living Christ, by our modern Nephi. And then we get this. And this is the Maseroth. If you stood outside on the lawn of the temple on April 5th, you would have seen one of the most rare planetary alignments that you could ever see. It was the alignment of all the Maseroth planets. Up there by Jupiter is Mars. You just can't see it because the name Jupiter is over Mars. So unlike a lot, you might see people who say, hey, there's this planetary alignment happening. That's great. It might mean something. But this is the Maseroth alignment. These are the planets of the pageant of the Maseroth. So if Christ is the sun, all the planets are aligned. On this night, people report seeing red aurora borealises all over the world. And that night, all 12 constellations, which is exceedingly rare, will be visible in the southern sky from Palmyra the night before they dedicate the Palmyra temple at 9 a.m. I would highly encourage you to go read that dedicatory prayer where God the Father and Jesus Christ are invited to be present by President Hinckley. So, this is the sign of the bridegroom who comes out of his chamber. This is the sign of the coming of the Son of Man. It's talked about in Psalms 19. It's talked about in the Doctrine and Covenants. And it is a symbol, one, that the Lord is coming, and two, that wrath is about to be poured out upon the world. In the Book of Mormon, the very next year, I don't know if I have this. I think I may have skipped it. The very next year, second year, right? So if our first year is 2000, our second year would be 2001. In the Book of Mormon, it says in their second year, it was peaceful, except the Gadianton robbers did commit many murders. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through this one. Reward her double unto her double according to her works. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day. She shall be utterly burned with fire. The kings shall lament for her, standing afar off, saying, Babylon, that mighty city, in 1 hour is thy judgment come. All the plane attacks will hit in 1 hour. Stock market will suffer the biggest close since 1929. And all the boats will sit out in the harbor watching the smoke, just like Revelation 18 describes. And they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city. In 1 hour is she made desolate. This is the sign of the coming of the wrath that will be poured out upon the world that will lead to the destruction of Babylon throughout the world. Excuse me. Almost immediately after seeing these great signs and wonders, it says in the Book of Mormon that they began to forget them, and they did not believe that there should be any more. I can't even remember why I put some of these things in here, but I'm not gonna go through all those. Okay, so I'm gonna do something a little unusual, I think, because my voice I know is not gonna last. And I had a request, so we're gonna turn that thing off, and I'm gonna take everything and I'm gonna condense it down into very plain language. Okay,